Maya Rodriguez had been working at Desert Eagle shooting range for 3 years, and every morning started the same way. She arrived at 5:30, 30 minutes before the range opened, to set up the targets and prepare the lanes. The routine had become second nature to her: check the target systems, replace damaged paper targets, sweep the shooting lanes, and ensure all safety equipment was properly positioned. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and allowed her to stay close to something she loved. Maya had grown up around firearms. Her father, a retired police officer, had taught her to shoot when she was 12. By 16, she could outshoot most of his colleagues at the department. She had dreamed of joining law enforcement herself, maybe even federal agencies, but life had other plans. A car accident during her senior year of high school had left her with nerve damage in her left hand. The injury wasn't severe enough to prevent her from living normally, but it was enough to disqualify her from most law enforcement positions. The tremor was barely noticeable to most people, but Maya felt it every time she tried to hold a rifle steady for extended periods. So instead of chasing her dreams, she settled for being around the sport she loved. Working at the range let her stay connected to shooting culture, even if she was mostly on the sidelines. She knew every regular customer, understood different firearms better than most gun store employees, and had become the unofficial range safety officer due to her sharp eye for dangerous behavior. The morning sun was just beginning to peek over the desert mountains when Maya finished setting up Lane 12, the farthest target station. This lane was popular with serious shooters because it offered the longest sightlines and the most privacy. She had just secured a fresh target at the 100-yard mark when she heard the distinctive rumble of a motorcycle pulling into the parking lot. Maya glanced at her watch. 6:15. The range had been open for 15 minutes, but most customers didn't arrive until after 7. Early birds were usually one of two types: dedicated enthusiasts who wanted quiet range time, or professionals who needed to maintain their skills. She walked back toward the main building, curious to see who had arrived so early. The motorcycle was a black Harley-Davidson, well-maintained but not flashy. The rider was removing his helmet, revealing short brown hair and the kind of tan that came from spending serious time outdoors. He was tall, probably 6'2", with the lean build of someone who stayed in excellent physical condition. When he turned toward the building, Maya noticed he moved with the fluid confidence of someone comfortable in potentially dangerous situations. The man approached the counter where Maya had positioned herself, offering a polite nod. His eyes were sharp, constantly scanning the environment in a way that suggested military training. Maya had seen that particular awareness in some of their law enforcement customers. "Morning," he said, his voice calm and measured. "I'd like to rent a lane for a couple hours, if possible." "Of course," Maya replied, reaching for the standard paperwork. "I'll need to see some identification and have you fill out our safety waiver." "Are you planning to rent equipment as well, or did you bring your own?" "I brought my own." He pulled out a military ID card along with his driver's license. The name read Marcus Chen, and Maya noticed the designation indicating he was active duty Navy. "I'm stationed at Coronado, but I'm visiting family in the area. Haven't had a chance to get to my usual range lately." Maya processed the information while trying to place why Coronado sounded familiar. Then, it clicked, that was where the Navy SEALs trained. She glanced at Marcus again, noting details she had missed before. The way he stood, the casual scan of exits and potential cover points, the calloused hands that suggested extensive firearms training. This wasn't just any sailor. "Lane preference?" she asked, keeping her voice professional despite her curiosity. "Whatever's available at the longer distances. I need to work on precision shooting." Maya assigned him to lane 12, the same lane she had just finished preparing. She handed him the lane key and a set of electronic ear protection, explaining the range rules and emergency procedures. Marcus listened attentively, asking a few clarifying questions that demonstrated he was already familiar with proper range etiquette. As he headed toward his assigned lane, Maya found herself watching him go. There was something compelling about his presence, not arrogant or flashy, but quietly competent in a way that suggested he had been tested in serious situations. She tried to focus on other tasks, but found her attention drifting toward lane 12. About 20 minutes later, Maya heard the first shots. Even from the office, she could tell this wasn't casual target practice. The rhythm was deliberate and controlled, with careful pauses between shots that indicated precision work rather than rapid fire. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to walk the range floor to check on all customers, giving her a legitimate reason to observe Marcus in action. What she saw impressed her immediately. Marcus was shooting from the prone position, using a rifle that Maya recognized as a high-end precision instrument. His form was textbook perfect, proper breathing, consistent cheek weld, smooth trigger control. More importantly, he was achieving results that most shooters would consider exceptional. At 100 yards, his shots were creating a group smaller than a quarter. Maya had seen skilled shooters before, but this was different. Marcus wasn't just hitting the target, he was demonstrating the kind of precision that required thousands of hours of practice and natural talent. She found herself genuinely impressed, which was rare given her experience around firearms. She continued her walk around the range, checking on the 3 other customers who had arrived, but her mind kept returning to lane 12. There was something about watching true expertise in action that she found fascinating. It reminded her of why she had loved shooting in the first place, before the accident had changed her trajectory. Around 8 o'clock, more customers began arriving, and Maya became busy with check-ins and lane assignments. The range started to fill up with the morning crowd, a mix of law enforcement officers getting in practice before their shifts, competitive shooters preparing for upcoming matches, and recreational shooters enjoying their weekend. Maya was helping a new customer select appropriate ammunition when she heard a commotion from the range floor. Raised voices, the kind that suggested either an argument or a safety issue. She quickly finished with the customer and hurried toward the sound. The disturbance was coming from lane 8, where 2 men were engaged in a heated discussion with a third shooter. Maya recognized the 2 men as Jake Morrison and his friend, both regulars who had a tendency toward arrogance and dismissive attitudes toward anyone they considered inferior shooters. "Look, buddy, you're clearly struggling with that rifle," Jake was saying to a younger man who appeared to be in his early 20s. "Maybe you should stick to something more your speed. This isn't a video game." The young shooter, who Maya remembered checking in earlier, was clearly frustrated. His target showed erratic shot placement, and his stance suggested he was fighting to control his rifle rather than working with it. Maya could see the situation escalating and knew she needed to intervene before it became a bigger problem. "Gentlemen, is there an issue here?" Maya approached the group with her most professional demeanor. Jake turned toward her with a smirk. "No issue, Maya. Just trying to give some friendly advice to someone who's clearly in over his head. Maybe he should consider the BB gun range down the street." The young shooter's face reddened, and Maya could see he was about to respond angrily. Before she could defuse the situation, another voice cut through the tension. "Actually, I think the problem might be with his equipment setup rather than his ability." Marcus had approached from lane 12, carrying his rifle in a casual but ready position. His voice was calm, but there was an authority to it that immediately changed the dynamic of the group. Jake looked at the newcomer with skepticism. "And you are?" "Someone who's seen a lot of shooters work through similar challenges." Marcus's response was diplomatic but firm. "Mind if I take a look at your setup?" he asked the young shooter. The younger man nodded eagerly, clearly grateful for any help that didn't come with humiliation. Marcus set his own rifle carefully on the shooting bench and examined the other man's weapon. Maya watched as he checked the scope mounting, the rifle's balance, and several other technical aspects. "Here's your issue," Marcus said after a moment. "Your scope rings are loose, and your bipod legs are uneven. You're fighting the rifle instead of working with it." He made a few quick adjustments, his hands moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who understood the equipment intimately. "Try a few shots now," Marcus suggested, stepping back to give the young man space. Maya watched as the younger shooter settled into position again. This time, his shots grouped much tighter, and his confidence visibly improved with each round. After 5 shots, he had achieved better accuracy than he had managed in the previous hour. Jake Morrison looked annoyed that his opportunity to humiliate someone had been interrupted. "Lucky guess," he muttered. Marcus ignored the comment, instead focusing on the young shooter. "Practice that position, and, remember, let the rifle do the work. Don't force it." As the group dispersed, Maya found herself impressed once again by Marcus's behavior. He had defused a potentially ugly situation while helping someone improve their skills. There had been no ego involved, no need to demonstrate his own superior ability. Just quiet competence and genuine desire to help. Maya returned to her duties, but she couldn't stop thinking about the interaction she had witnessed. There was something about Marcus that reminded her of the best aspects of shooting sports: the mentorship, the continuous learning, the focus on precision and safety rather than ego and competition. The morning continued with typical range activities, but Maya found her attention frequently drifting toward lane 12. Marcus continued his practice session with the same methodical precision she had observed earlier. Occasionally, other shooters would glance in his direction, clearly noting the quality of his shooting, but Marcus seemed focused entirely on his own training. Around 10:30, Maya was organizing ammunition inventory when she heard her name called from the range floor. She looked up to see Marcus approaching the counter, having finished his session. "Excellent facilities," he said as he returned his ear protection. "Mind if I ask how long you've been working here?" 3 years, Maya replied. "You heading out?" "For now. I'll probably be back tomorrow morning if that lane's available." Maya checked the reservation system. "Should be fine." "Same time?" Marcus nodded, then paused as if considering something. "That was well handled earlier, by the way. The situation with those guys harassing the new shooter. Just part of the job. We try to keep things professional here. It shows. Not all ranges care about that kind of thing." Marcus gathered his rifle case and prepared to leave. "See you tomorrow." Maya watched him walk toward the exit, then head for his motorcycle in the parking lot. There was something about their brief interaction that left her curious to know more about him. It wasn't just his obvious skill with firearms, though that was impressive. It was the way he carried himself, confident without being arrogant, helpful without being condescending. As the morning shift continued, Maya found herself thinking about the incident with Jake Morrison and how differently Marcus had approached the situation. Where Jake had seen an opportunity to feel superior, Marcus had seen a problem to solve. Where Jake had focused on tearing someone down, Marcus had focused on building them up. The rest of Maya's shift passed without major incidents, but she couldn't shake the feeling that her encounter with Marcus had been significant somehow. Maybe it was just the reminder of what excellence looked like, or maybe it was something more personal, a glimpse of the world she had once hoped to be part of. When her replacement arrived at 2 o'clock, Maya gathered her things and prepared to leave. As she walked toward her car, she found herself looking forward to tomorrow morning, curious to see if Marcus would return as planned. Something told her that his presence at the range might lead to more interesting developments. The drive home gave Maya time to reflect on the morning's events. She thought about Marcus's precision, his helpfulness with the struggling shooter, and the way he had carried himself throughout the entire session. There was definitely more to him than just another skilled shooter, and Maya found herself genuinely curious about his story. That evening, Maya found herself looking up information about Navy SEALs and their training requirements. What she read impressed her even more. The level of physical and mental preparation required was extraordinary, and the shooting standards were far beyond what most people could imagine achieving. If Marcus was indeed a SEAL, his morning performance at the range made even more sense. As she prepared for bed, Maya realized she was looking forward to work tomorrow in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. The routine of range maintenance and customer service had become comfortable, but it had also become predictable. Marcus's presence had introduced an element of interest that reminded her why she had been drawn to the shooting sports in the first place. Maybe tomorrow would bring new opportunities to learn something, or maybe just another chance to observe real expertise in action. Either way, Maya found herself anticipating her morning shift with genuine enthusiasm for the first time in months. Maya arrived at the range the next morning with unusual anticipation. She completed her setup routine quickly, paying extra attention to lane 12 where Marcus had indicated he would return. At exactly 6:15, she heard the familiar rumble of his motorcycle in the parking lot. "Good morning," Marcus said as he approached the counter. "Lane 12 still available?" "Reserved for you," Maya replied, surprised by her own forward thinking. She had actually blocked the lane in the reservation system, something she rarely did for customers unless specifically requested. Marcus raised an eyebrow but smiled. "Efficient service. I appreciate that." As he headed to his lane, Maya noticed he was carrying a different rifle case today, larger than yesterday's precision rifle. Her curiosity was piqued, but she forced herself to focus on other opening tasks rather than immediately checking on his activity. The morning started quietly, with only 2 other early customers. Maya was reviewing inventory reports when she heard the distinctive sound of rapid, controlled fire from lane 12. This wasn't yesterday's precision shooting, this was something entirely different. Unable to resist, Maya walked onto the range floor under the pretense of checking target mechanisms. What she saw made her stop and stare. Marcus was shooting what appeared to be a military-style rifle, engaging multiple targets with smooth transitions and controlled bursts. His movements were fluid and practiced, like watching a choreographed performance. He would engage one target, smoothly transition to a second, then a third, all while maintaining perfect control of his rifle. The speed was impressive, but what struck Maya most was the precision. Even shooting rapidly, his shots were consistently finding their marks. Maya realized she was witnessing training that went far beyond recreational shooting or even typical law enforcement practice. This was combat preparation, the kind of training designed to save lives in the most dangerous situations imaginable. Pretty impressive, isn't it? Maya turned to find Jake Morrison standing beside her, but his usual sarcastic tone was notably absent. Today, he seemed genuinely awed by what they were watching. Yeah, Maya agreed. Definitely not your average range session. They watched in silence as Marcus completed what appeared to be a complex drill involving multiple target transitions and position changes. When he finished, he carefully cleared his rifle and set it down before examining his targets through a spotting scope. Think he's military? Jake asked. I'd say that's a safe bet. Jake nodded thoughtfully. Makes sense. I've seen some good shooters, but that's different. That's like watching someone who's used this stuff for real. Maya was surprised by Jake's mature observation. Yesterday he had been arrogant and dismissive, but watching Marcus seemed to have provided some perspective on what actual expertise looked like. As the morning progressed, more customers arrived, including several law enforcement officers preparing for their quarterly qualifications. Maya noticed that even these professional shooters seemed to take note of the activity at Lane 12. Word was spreading quietly among the regular customers that someone exceptional was using the range. Around 8:30, Maya was helping a customer select appropriate ear protection when she heard raised voices from the parking lot. Through the front windows, she could see a confrontation developing between two men and a woman near a small sedan. The woman appeared to be in her 50s, well-dressed but clearly distressed. The two men were larger, younger, and seemed to be making demands rather than having a conversation. Maya couldn't hear the specifics, but the body language suggested the situation was escalating towards something unpleasant. Maya reached for the phone to call local police, but before she could dial, she noticed Marcus had also seen the situation. He had emerged from the range building and was walking calmly toward the confrontation. Maya abandoned the phone and moved closer to the windows to watch. Marcus approached the group with the same measured confidence he displayed on the shooting range. Maya couldn't hear what he said, but his presence immediately changed the dynamic. The two men turned toward him, clearly sizing up whether he represented a serious obstacle to whatever they had planned. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. Maya watched as Marcus spoke quietly to the two men, his posture relaxed but ready. Whatever he said was effective. The men backed away from the woman and headed toward their own vehicle. Marcus remained with the woman until they had driven away, then appeared to offer assistance with her car. Maya was processing what she had witnessed when Marcus returned to the building. He moved with the same calm demeanor, showing no signs that anything unusual had occurred. Everything okay out there? Maya asked as he passed the counter. Just a misunderstanding that got resolved, Marcus replied. The lady's car had broken down, and those guys were being less than helpful with their offers of assistance. Maya suspected there was more to the story, but Marcus's tone suggested he wasn't interested in elaborating. She appreciated that he had intervened without making a big show of it, handling the situation quietly and effectively. That was decent of you to step in. Marcus paused and looked at her directly. Sometimes people need help. No big deal. There was something in his tone that suggested helping others was simply part of who he was, not something that required special recognition. Maya found herself increasingly interested in understanding what made this man tick. The rest of the morning passed with typical range activities, but Maya found herself paying more attention to Marcus's training routine. He alternated between precision shooting and dynamic drills, sometimes using different rifles, sometimes working on pistol skills. Everything he did was purposeful and professional. Around 10 o'clock, a group of competitive shooters arrived for a practice session. Maya recognized them as serious enthusiasts who regularly participated in regional matches. They were skilled shooters who took their sport seriously, and they clearly noticed the activity at Lane 12. One of them, a man named David Chun whom Maya knew as a masterclass competitor, approached her at the counter. "Who's the shooter on 12?" he asked quietly. "Customer named Marcus," Maya replied, keeping her answer professionally vague. "He's good. Really good. Mind if I ask what his background is?" Maya shrugged. "Military, I think, but he hasn't shared specifics." David nodded thoughtfully. "Makes sense. That's not hobby-level shooting. That's someone who's been doing this professionally for a while." As if summoned by their conversation, Marcus appeared at the counter to rent additional targets. David took the opportunity to introduce himself. "Marcus, right? I'm David. I couldn't help but notice you're shooting. Pretty impressive stuff." Marcus accepted the handshake politely. "Thanks. Just trying to stay sharp." "You compete at all?" "There's a precision rifle match coming up next month that might interest you." "I appreciate the invite, but competitions aren't really my thing. I shoot for different reasons." David seemed to understand the distinction. "Fair enough. Well, if you ever change your mind, the local shooting community would welcome someone with your skills." After David returned to his group, Maya found herself curious about Marcus's comment regarding shooting for different reasons. She was beginning to understand that his relationship with firearms was fundamentally different from recreational shooters or even competitive athletes. When Marcus finished his morning session and returned his gear, Maya decided to take a small risk. "Mind if I ask you something?" she said as he prepared to leave. Marcus paused, clearly open to the question. "Yesterday you helped that new shooter with his equipment problems. Today you handled that situation in the parking lot. You shoot better than anyone I've seen here, but you don't seem interested in competitions or showing off. What makes you tick?" Marcus considered the question carefully before responding. "I guess I see shooting as a tool rather than a hobby. When it's your job to protect people, you approach it differently than when you're doing it for fun." "Protect people?" "Something like that." Marcus's answer was deliberately vague, but Maya sensed he was being as open as his position allowed. "Well, whatever your background, it's been interesting watching someone who really knows what they're doing." Marcus seemed to appreciate the comment. "You know something about shooting yourself, don't you? I've noticed you watching, and your observations are pretty sharp for someone who just works at a range." Maya felt a flush of pride at the recognition. "I grew up around firearms. My dad was a cop, taught me to shoot when I was young. I was pretty good at it, actually." "Was?" Maya hesitated, then decided to share part of her story. "Had an accident in high school. Nothing major, but it left me with some nerve damage that ended certain career plans." Marcus nodded with understanding rather than pity. "That's tough. But you stayed involved with the sport in other ways. Working here keeps me around what I love, even if I'm not actively competing anymore. Ever think about getting back into shooting? Sometimes people underestimate what they're still capable of." Maya shrugged. "The tremor in my hand makes precision work difficult. I can still shoot recreationally, but not at the level I used to." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then made a suggestion that surprised her. "Would you be interested in some training? I mean, if you want to explore what's still possible." Maya felt her heart skip. "You'd be willing to do that? Why not? You clearly understand the fundamentals, and sometimes a different perspective can help work around physical limitations." Maya found herself nodding before she had fully processed the offer. "That would be amazing. When? How about tomorrow morning?" "Same time, but maybe we could work together instead of separate lanes." "Definitely. Thank you." Marcus gathered his equipment and headed toward the exit. "See you tomorrow, Maya." As she watched him leave, Maya realized he had used her name for the first time. Somehow, that small detail made their arrangement feel more personal and significant. The rest of her shift passed in a blur of anticipation and nervousness. Maya found herself thinking about what equipment she would use, what Marcus might be able to teach her, and whether she could overcome the limitations that had sidelined her shooting aspirations years ago. That evening, Maya went to her storage unit and retrieved the rifle case she hadn't opened in over 2 years. Inside was the precision rifle her father had helped her purchase during her senior year of high school, before the accident had changed everything. The rifle was well maintained but hadn't been fired in a long time. Maya spent the evening cleaning and inspecting the rifle, preparing it for tomorrow's session. As she worked, she found herself remembering the joy she had once felt when shooting, the satisfaction of achieving perfect precision, the dreams she had harbored about careers that would let her use these skills professionally. For the first time in years, Maya allowed herself to hope that maybe those dreams weren't completely dead. Maybe, with the right guidance, she could find a way back to the sport that had once been central to her identity. The next morning, Maya arrived at work 30 minutes earlier than usual, carrying her rifle case with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. She completed her setup routine in record time, then positioned herself at the counter to wait for Marcus's arrival. At precisely 6:15, she heard his motorcycle in the parking lot. When he entered the building, he immediately noticed her rifle case. "Ready to see what's possible?" he asked with an encouraging smile. "Ready," Maya replied, though her voice betrayed her nervousness. They walked together toward the range floor, and Maya felt like she was taking the first step on a journey she had never expected to begin. Whatever happened in the next hour, she sensed it would be significant in ways she couldn't yet understand. Marcus assigned them to adjacent lanes, setting up targets at various distances. "Let's start by seeing where you are currently, then we'll work from there." Maya unpacked her rifle with hands that trembled slightly, though whether from nerve damage or simple nervousness, she couldn't tell. As she prepared for her first shots in years, she realized this session might be about much more than just improving her shooting skills. It might be about reclaiming a part of herself she had thought was lost forever. Maya's first shot missed the target completely. Her cheek wasn't properly positioned against the rifle stock, her breathing was erratic, and the tremor in her left hand was more pronounced than she had expected. Years of not shooting had allowed bad habits to develop, while the muscle memory of proper form had faded. "Take your time," Marcus said quietly from the adjacent lane. "Don't worry about the results right now. Just focus on feeling comfortable with the rifle again." Maya tried to settle into a proper shooting position, but everything felt wrong. The rifle that had once felt like a natural extension of herself now seemed foreign and unwieldy. Her confidence, already shaky, began to crumble completely. "This was a mistake," she muttered, starting to lift her head from the scope. "I can't do this anymore." "Stop," Marcus said firmly but not unkindly. "You're rushing and overthinking everything. Let's approach this differently." He set down his own rifle and moved to the shooting bench beside Maya. "Mind if I observe your setup?" Maya nodded, grateful for any guidance that might help her avoid further embarrassment. Marcus watched carefully as she positioned herself behind the rifle. "Your fundamentals are still there," he said after a moment. "But you're fighting the equipment instead of working with it. The tremor in your left hand isn't as big a problem as you think it is. It feels like a huge problem. Because you're trying to force stability instead of finding it naturally. Here, try something different." Marcus made several adjustments to Maya's rifle setup, repositioning the bipod, adjusting the buttstock length, and modifying her hand placement. "The key is working with your body's natural stability rather than fighting against its limitations." "I don't understand." Marcus demonstrated with his own rifle, showing Maya how proper technique could compensate for various physical challenges. "Every shooter has limitations. The trick is building your fundamentals around what works for your specific situation." He guided Maya through a series of dry-fire exercises, helping her develop a consistent shooting position that accommodated her hand tremor rather than fighting it. The process was methodical and patient, focusing on building confidence through small successes rather than expecting immediate perfection. "Try again," Marcus suggested after 20 minutes of position work. "But this time, don't worry about where the shot goes. Just focus on executing the fundamentals we practiced." Maya settled behind her rifle, implementing the adjustments Marcus had suggested. This time, everything felt more natural. Her breathing was controlled, her position was stable, and the tremor seemed less disruptive to her aim. The shot hit the target, not perfectly centered, but within the scoring rings. Maya felt a surge of satisfaction that reminded her why she had loved shooting in the first place. "Better," Marcus commented. "Now do it again, exactly the same way." Maya's second shot was closer to center, and her confidence began to build. Marcus continued to offer quiet guidance, helping her refine her technique with each shot. By the end of 30 minutes, Maya was achieving groups that would have been respectable for any recreational shooter. "This is amazing," Maya said as she examined her target through a spotting scope. "I haven't shot like this in years." You haven't lost as much as you thought. You just needed to rediscover your fundamentals with your current physical situation. Maya felt a renewed sense of possibility. Maybe her shooting career wasn't completely over. Maybe there were paths forward she hadn't considered. Their training session was interrupted by commotion from the range entrance. Maya looked up to see Jake Morrison arguing loudly with her co-worker Sarah, who had arrived for the afternoon shift change. "I don't care what your policy says," Jake was shouting. "I've been coming here for 2 years, and I'm not going to be lectured about safety by someone who doesn't know anything about firearms." Sarah, who was relatively new to the range, looked overwhelmed by Jake's aggressive attitude. Maya could see the situation escalating quickly. "I should handle this," Maya said, starting to get up from her shooting position. "Let me," Marcus suggested quietly. Sometimes these situations require a different approach. Marcus walked calmly toward the argument, his presence immediately noticeable to both Jake and Sarah. Maya followed at a distance, curious to see how he would handle the confrontation. "Is there a problem here?" Marcus asked in the same calm tone Maya had heard him use before. Jake turned toward Marcus with obvious annoyance. "Yeah, there's a problem. This place is implementing stupid policies that interfere with serious shooters." "What specific policy is causing the issue?" Sarah stepped forward nervously. "Mr. Morrison brought ammunition that doesn't meet our range safety requirements. It's designed for longer distances than our facility can safely accommodate." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "So it's a safety issue, not a policy issue." "It's a stupid restriction," Jake insisted. "I know what I'm doing." "I'm sure you do," Marcus replied diplomatically. "But ranges have to maintain insurance and liability standards that protect everyone." "It's not personal, it's just business reality." Jake seemed prepared to continue arguing, but something in Marcus's demeanor suggested that would be unwise. There was no threat in his posture, but there was an unmistakable authority that commanded respect. "Look," Marcus continued, "why don't I help you select ammunition that meets the range requirements but still gives you the performance you're looking for? There are several options that might work better." The suggestion was reasonable and face-saving for Jake, who grudgingly agreed to consider alternatives. Marcus spent a few minutes reviewing ammunition options with both Jake and Sarah, helping them understand the technical requirements while finding a solution everyone could accept. Maya watched the interaction with growing admiration. Marcus had defused a potentially ugly confrontation while helping everyone involved understand the underlying issues. There had been no need for authority or confrontation, just patient problem-solving and respect for everyone's concerns. After Jake left with appropriate ammunition, Sarah approached Maya with obvious relief. "Thank you for stepping in," she said to Marcus. "I wasn't sure how to handle that." "Dealing with difficult customers is part of the job," Marcus replied. "The key is staying professional and finding solutions rather than getting into arguments." Sarah nodded gratefully and returned to her duties. Maya realized this was another example of Marcus's approach to helping others, quiet competence without seeking recognition or credit. "You handled that perfectly," Maya told him as they returned to their shooting lanes. "Jake's not really a bad guy. He just gets frustrated when he feels like rules are arbitrary rather than logical. Once he understood the reasoning, he was willing to work with the system." Maya appreciated Marcus's charitable interpretation of Jake's behavior, even though she knew Jake could be genuinely difficult to deal with. It seemed typical of Marcus to look for the best in people while still maintaining appropriate boundaries. They resumed their training session, with Marcus continuing to help Maya refine her technique. As the morning progressed, Maya's shooting improved dramatically. More importantly, her confidence was returning for the first time in years. "I want to try something more challenging," Maya said after successfully completing several precision shooting exercises. Marcus considered the request. "What did you have in mind?" "Multiple targets, maybe some position changes. I used to enjoy dynamic shooting before the accident." "We can try that, but let's start simple and build up gradually." Marcus set up a series of targets at different distances, then walked Maya through a basic drill that involved engaging each target in sequence. The exercise required her to move between shooting positions while maintaining accuracy and speed. Maya's first attempt was clumsy, but she could feel the muscle memory beginning to return. Movement between positions felt more natural, and her rifle handling improved with each repetition. "This is incredible," Maya said after completing the drill successfully.
I never thought I'd be able to do this kind of shooting again.
Physical limitations don't have to define what's possible, Marcus replied. They just change how you approach the problem. As they continued training, Maya noticed other range customers beginning to take notice of their activity. David Chen and his competitive shooting group had arrived and were clearly impressed by what they were seeing.
Maya, David called out during a break in the shooting. I haven't seen you shoot in years. Looking good out there.
Thanks to some excellent coaching, Maya replied, gesturing toward Marcus.
David nodded appreciatively. Well, if you ever want to get back into competition, there are divisions that might work well for you.
The shooting sports have evolved to accommodate different situations. Maya felt a thrill at the suggestion, but also uncertainty about whether she was ready for that level of commitment.
I'll think about it.
After David's group returned to their own practice, Marcus continued working with Maya on increasingly complex exercises. Her confidence grew with each successful drill, and she began to remember why shooting had once been such an important part of her identity. I have a question, Maya said during a break to rehydrate and check targets.
Why are you helping me like this?
You don't know me well, and this is taking time away from your own training. Marcus was quiet for a moment before responding. I've seen a lot of people who had to rebuild their capabilities after setbacks. Physical injuries, emotional trauma, career changes.
Sometimes all someone needs is proof that adaptation is possible. Is that something you've had to deal with personally? In different ways, yeah.
The military teaches you that obstacles are just problems to solve, not permanent barriers. But it took me time to internalize that lesson. Maya sensed there was more to Marcus's story, but she appreciated that he was sharing what he felt comfortable discussing. His willingness to help her seemed rooted in personal experience with overcoming challenges.
Whatever your reasons, I'm grateful.
This morning has been life-changing. We're just getting started, Marcus replied with a slight smile.
If you're serious about getting back into shooting, there's a lot more we can work on.
Maya felt her heart race at the implication.
You'd be willing to continue training with me? As long as I'm in the area, sure.
But I should mention that my schedule might change suddenly.
Military commitments sometimes interfere with personal plans.
Maya nodded, understanding that Marcus's availability would be limited by factors beyond his control. Still, the opportunity to continue learning from someone of his caliber was more than she had ever hoped for. As they packed up their equipment, Maya realized the morning had been about much more than improving her shooting skills. It had been about rediscovering possibilities she had written off years ago, about learning to work with limitations rather than being defined by them.
Same time tomorrow? Marcus asked as they prepared to leave.
Absolutely, Maya replied without hesitation.
Walking toward the parking lot, Maya felt lighter than she had in years.
The tremor in her hand hadn't disappeared, and she still faced significant challenges in rebuilding her shooting skills. But, for the first time since her accident, she felt like those challenges were surmountable rather than insurmountable. Marcus's motorcycle rumbled to life as Maya reached her car. As she watched him drive away, she realized their training relationship had become about more than just shooting technique. He had shown her a different way of thinking about limitations and possibilities, about adaptation and resilience. That evening, Maya found herself researching competitive shooting divisions that might accommodate her situation. She also looked up training methodologies used by military and law enforcement, curious to understand more about Marcus's approach to skill development. For the first time in years, Maya began to consider possibilities that extended beyond her current job at the range. Maybe there were careers in the shooting sports that she could pursue. Maybe her accident had been a detour rather than a permanent roadblock. As she prepared for bed, Maya felt genuine excitement about the next day's training session. She was beginning to understand that working with Marcus might be the beginning of a completely new chapter in her life, one she had never imagined possible. Maya arrived at work the next morning to find Marcus already waiting in the parking lot. He was leaning against his motorcycle, talking quietly on his phone. Even from a distance, she could tell the conversation was serious. His posture was more rigid than usual, and his responses were clipped and professional. When he finished the call, Marcus approached the range entrance with a different energy than previous mornings. The easy confidence was still there, but overlaid with something more urgent.
Morning, Maya said as she unlocked the front door. Everything okay?
Change of plans today, Marcus replied.
I need to cut our session short. Got called back to base earlier than expected. Maya felt a stab of disappointment but tried to keep it out of her voice. How much time do we have? Maybe an hour. But I want to make it count.
They moved quickly through the range setup, and Maya noticed Marcus was carrying additional equipment today, cases she hadn't seen before. When they reached their shooting lanes, he began unpacking items that looked significantly more advanced than anything they had used previously. What's all this? Maya asked, examining what appeared to be a high-end precision rifle with specialized optics. Consider it a graduation test, Marcus said with a slight smile. I want to see how much you've absorbed from our training sessions. Marcus set up targets at multiple distances, some as far as 300 yards. Maya felt her stomach tighten with nervousness. They had never attempted shots at that distance. I don't know if I'm ready for this level of challenge, she said honestly. You're more ready than you think. Trust your fundamentals, and don't overthink the mechanics. Marcus handed Maya the precision rifle, which felt heavier and more substantial than her own equipment. The scope was clearly military grade, with features she didn't immediately recognize. This is way beyond what I'm used to, Maya protested. Sometimes you need better equipment to discover what you're truly capable of, Marcus replied. The rifle will do its job if you do yours. Maya settled into her shooting position, trying to apply everything Marcus had taught her over the past few days. The rifle felt different, but not uncomfortably so. The weight was well distributed, and the trigger was crisp and precise. Marcus guided her through the scope adjustments and explained how to read wind conditions at the longer distances. His instruction was more detailed than before, covering advanced concepts that went well beyond recreational shooting. First target is at 100 yards, Marcus said. Just like we've been practicing. Get comfortable with the rifle before we extend the range. Maya's first shot was well-centered, and she felt the rifle's superior precision immediately. The scope clarity was remarkable, and the rifle's stability made her tremor less noticeable than with her own equipment. Good. Now the 200-yard target. This shot required more consideration of environmental factors, but Maya felt confident in her ability to make the necessary adjustments. Her shot was slightly high but well within acceptable accuracy standards. Excellent. Ready for 300? Maya took a deep breath and studied the distant target through the scope. At this distance, the target appeared much smaller, and she could feel the increased difficulty of the shot. But Marcus's training had prepared her for systematic problem-solving rather than just hoping for luck. She made careful adjustments for distance and wind, settled into her most stable shooting position, and executed the shot with the same fundamentals she had been practicing all week. Through the scope, she could see the bullet impact near the center of the target. Outstanding, Marcus said, and Maya could hear genuine pride in his voice. That's expert-level shooting, Maya. Maya felt a rush of accomplishment unlike anything she had experienced in years. The shot had required every skill Marcus had taught her, plus confidence in her own abilities that she thought she had lost forever. Now I want to try something more challenging, Marcus said. Multiple targets, different distances, time pressure. Think you're up for it? Maya nodded, feeling more confident than she had since before her accident. Marcus set up a complex drill involving 5 targets at various distances, each requiring different adjustments and shooting positions. You have 2 minutes to engage all 5 targets, Marcus explained. Focus on accuracy first, speed second. If you rush the fundamentals, you'll miss everything. Maya took her position and waited for Marcus's signal. When he called go, she smoothly transitioned between targets, applying the skill she had learned while maintaining the mental discipline Marcus had emphasized throughout their training. The drill was challenging but manageable. Maya found herself moving fluidly between positions, making rapid but accurate adjustments, and maintaining control despite the time pressure. When Marcus called time, she had successfully engaged all 5 targets with respectable accuracy. How did I do? Maya asked, unable to hide her excitement. Marcus examined each target through a spotting scope before responding. 4 out of 5 targets would be considered hits by military standards. The 5th was close enough to count as effective. Maya felt like she might burst with pride. Military standards, something she had never imagined achieving with her limitations. There's something else I want to show you, Marcus said, walking toward his equipment cases. He returned with what Maya recognized as a law enforcement sniper rifle, complete with specialized accessories. This is what I used during my last deployment, Marcus explained.
It's set up for precision work under challenging conditions. Want to try it? Maya felt overwhelmed by the offer.
This wasn't just advanced equipment, it was a tool that Marcus had used in actual operations, probably in situations where lives depended on precision.
I don't know if I should be handling something that important to you. Equipment is just equipment, Marcus replied. What matters is the person using it.
And you've proven you understand how to use precision rifles responsibly.
Maya accepted the rifle with something approaching reverence.
As she examined the weapon, she noticed details that spoke to serious professional use, where patterns that came from extensive fieldwork, modifications that enhanced practical performance, and maintenance standards that exceeded anything she had seen in civilian firearms.
Same drill as before, Marcus instructed, but I want you to think about something different while you shoot. What's that? Imagine that someone's life depends on your shot.
Not for real, he added quickly, but just to understand the mindset required for precision work under pressure. Maya positioned herself behind the rifle, trying to internalize what Marcus was suggesting. She had always thought of shooting as a sport or recreational activity. Now he was asking her to consider it as a life or death skill. The first shot felt different with this mindset.
Instead of focusing on scores or groups, Maya found herself considering the absolute necessity of precision.
The shot was perfectly centered.
Again, Marcus said. Different target, same mindset.
Maya's second shot was equally precise, and she began to understand what Marcus meant about the mental aspects of professional shooting. It wasn't just about technical skill, it was about the psychological discipline to perform under ultimate pressure. They continued the exercise for several more shots, with Maya demonstrating consistent accuracy despite the increased mental pressure. She was discovering capabilities she never knew she possessed.
I have to ask you something, Maya said during a brief break. What you're teaching me, this isn't just recreational shooting instruction, is it?
Marcus was quiet for a moment before responding.
No, it's not. I've been teaching you the same fundamentals I learned in special operations training. Why?
Because you have natural ability that goes beyond hobby-level shooting. And because sometimes people need to discover what they're truly capable of, even if they never use those capabilities professionally. Maya felt the weight of Marcus's words. He had been evaluating her potential for something more significant than recreational shooting, something that might lead to opportunities she had never considered.
Are you saying I could do this professionally? Even with my limitations? I'm saying limitations are often more flexible than we assume.
There are careers in the shooting sports that might be perfect for someone with your skills and background.
Before Maya could respond, Marcus's phone rang.
He answered immediately, and Maya could tell from his side of the conversation that his military commitments were demanding immediate attention.
I have to go, Marcus said after ending the call. But, Maya, I want you to remember something important. What's that? You've just demonstrated expert-level shooting ability under challenging conditions. Don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you that your accident defines your limitations. You've proven today that you can perform at whatever level you choose to pursue.
Marcus began packing his equipment rapidly but carefully.
There's a contact I want you to reach out to, he said, handing Maya a business card.
She runs a training company that works with law enforcement and security firms.
Tell her I recommended you.
Maya looked at the card, which identified someone named Patricia Williams as a firearms instructor and consultant. What would I say to her? Tell her about your background, your recent training, and your interest in exploring professional opportunities. Be honest about your limitations, but also about what you've accomplished this week.
Marcus finished packing and prepared to leave. Maya, it's been a privilege working with you.
You have exceptional potential, and I hope you pursue it.
Thank you for everything, Maya said, feeling emotional about his departure. You've changed my life in ways I'm still figuring out. Marcus smiled and headed toward the exit.
Take care of yourself, Maya. And remember, you're capable of much more than you realize. Maya watched him leave, then looked down at the business card in her hand.
Patricia Williams, firearms training consultant.
The card included credentials that suggested serious professional standing in the law enforcement and security communities. For the next hour, Maya continued shooting with her own equipment, practicing the techniques Marcus had taught her. Every shot felt different now, informed by a new understanding of what precision shooting could mean beyond recreational activity. When her shift ended that afternoon, Maya drove home with her mind racing about possibilities she had never previously considered. Marcus had opened a door she didn't even know existed, showing her that her accident might have delayed her dreams rather than ending them.
That evening, Maya spent hours researching Patricia Williams and her training company.
What she found was impressive: a former military instructor who now worked with elite law enforcement units and private security firms. Her programs were designed for professionals who needed the highest levels of precision shooting capability. Maya also researched career opportunities in the firearms industry that might suit someone with her newfound skills. The options were more extensive than she had imagined: consulting, training, equipment testing, and specialized security roles that valued precision over physical capability. 2 days later, Maya finally worked up the courage to call Patricia Williams. The conversation was brief but encouraging. Patricia was familiar with Marcus's reputation and took his recommendations seriously. She invited Maya to visit her training facility for an evaluation session. "I should warn you," Patricia said near the end of their call, "my programs are designed for people who want to work at the highest professional levels. If you're just looking for recreational improvement, there are better options." "I'm not sure what I'm looking for yet," Maya replied honestly. "But I know I want to find out what's possible." That's exactly the right attitude. See you next weekend. As Maya prepared for bed that night, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just 1 week. Marcus had appeared at her range as a customer, but he had become something much more significant: a mentor who had helped her rediscover capabilities she thought were lost forever. Maya still didn't know exactly where her newfound skills might lead, but, for the first time since her accident, she was excited about the possibilities rather than limited by her perceived restrictions. Marcus had taught her that obstacles were problems to solve rather than permanent barriers, and she was ready to start solving them. The next morning, Maya returned to work at the range with a completely different perspective. She was still the same person doing the same job, but now she understood it as a stepping stone rather than a final destination. Her accident had been a setback, but Marcus had shown her that setbacks could become setups for entirely new opportunities. Maya looked forward to her evaluation with Patricia Williams, knowing that whatever the outcome, Marcus had given her something invaluable: the knowledge that she was capable of much more than she had ever imagined possible. The tremor in her hand hadn't disappeared, but it no longer defined what she could achieve. As she began her morning routine of setting up targets and preparing the range for customers, Maya smiled at the memory of Marcus's final words: "You're capable of much more than you realize." She was ready to find out exactly how much more that might be.